بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. To Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, all praise belongs to Allah. We praise Him. We seek His help. We ask His forgiveness. We repent unto Him. We seek refuge with Allah from all of our errors and mistakes and sins. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I give open testimony that there is no deity except Allah, that He is one and alone. We associate nothing in worship. He has no partners. I bear witness that Muhammad, to whom the Quran is revealed, is His servant and His messenger. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Prayers and peace be upon the most honorable and noble messenger, the most generous, honorable messenger, upon his descendants, his companions, upon the righteous all, upon us all, believers in Allah and His message. Ameen. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah. We thank Allah for our presence. We thank Allah for His guidance and mercy. Thank Allah for the messenger that He has sent to us, including the revelation and establishing guidance for humanity for all time. I would like to begin with a reference from the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna salata tanhaw 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar wa la dhikrullahi akbar. Wallahu ya'lamu ma tasna'un. Translation with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Indeed, the salat, prayer, preserves or protects from lewdness and iniquity. And verily, surely, the remembrance of Allah is the most important. And Allah knows and Allah is aware of what you do, is the translation. So Allah informs us not only His prayer establishes the principles, the pillar of our faith, established as the pillar of the belief, or the system of belief, but we're also taught about them. We're educated about the Salah. We're educated into its importance. The believer is educated to its importance. And one of the things this verse here really emphasizes, firstly, is that it's a protection, which says that we are vulnerable. Vulnerable as believers, because this is guidance for the believers, right? Hudan lin-nas is guidance for the believers. So our belief to protect the life of belief. The physical life may not feel anything. You may live a very good, excellent diet, right, exercise and all of that. But when we come to the mosque, we enter on our right foot. We enter, ask Allah, oh Allah, open for me your guidance for me. So we're coming here for the express purpose. This meeting is for, or this gathering established by Allah through His servant Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for learning how we are to develop, how to be constituted as believers in God. So it's the prayer that's protection, a preservative, right? From lewdness and iniquity. And surely the remembrance of Allah, it says in the verse, is the most important, the most effective. And Allah is aware. Right? Associated hadith to prayer, of course, continue extending our perspective, perception by the belief on prayer, is the prophet prayers. He said that those who remember Allah and those who don't, I like the difference between the living and the dead. Now that's significant. But that's an introduction into us seeing the insight into prayer, not just on the surface of ritual, but how is effective for life? How is it effective for the quality of life? How it constitutes the quality of life? How it raises the standard or the status of life, human life, to a higher level than that of the animals. That is really, I think, what Allah wanted us to understand, was being impressed. And the verse says it does protect us from fahsha and munkar. Fahsha is a very special term because it talks about not just your run-of-the-mill, average Walgreens evil, not just talking about a common evil, talking about a special evil that is done publicly in decency, but without any reservation. No qualms about it. Give me your car, baby in it, I don't care, right? These are evils that we are witnessing on a daily basis, unfortunately, but we can't say that mankind was not warned. And we can't, when we have evidence in the scripture, say this is the kind of damage that can occur in a society and a social order. Fahsha. Munkar is another very special term, but these are the two things we're being warned about. If we're not warned, then we can't be protected from it. That's why I say prayer is not only given to us as a pillar, but it's also given to us as an education of something that's related to the development of the human being, focusing on the soul. So it's evil, indecency, with no reservations, no consideration of the conscience. The conscience is gone, it's asleep. And it continues to spread and multiply, denying the human being his right to freedom, his challenges his right to freedom. So Fahsha and Munkar. And Allah says, verily the remembrance of Allah is the most important, the most effective. And Allah knows what you do, Tasna'un. When you look into this word, you can see how it applies to a cultural or universal effect or community issue in the Prophet. That is done in a way that is referring to not just what you do. Arabic students know fa'ala is, because when they start to learn studying verbs, that's what they learn, fa'ala, right? To do, he did, fa'ala. Why didn't they use the word fa'ala here? Because not just talking about a simple act. It's talking about something that becomes established as a continuous practice, what we call a lifestyle. See how far the Quran is ahead? Way ahead. 1400 years ago, it saw this type of metropolis, right? It saw the influence, cultural influence, everyone come from it. It also allowed us to know that we were going to be very educated. Allah knew He created His creation to educate us, to evolve us, our minds, our hearts, to mind our intellects. So the Prophet is teaching us here, and Allah is revealing to the Prophet to teach us, to show us that indeed it is a life. Prayer is to be seen as what constitutes a life, productive life. And it also is that was neglected the very foundation for the life, for human life. Only Allah knows that. We don't know that. That's why we come to the Master, right? That's why we read the Quran. That's why we're given the Quran to be our book for guidance. And the Prophet ﷺ, Allah says to also in the Quran about the Prophet, prayers and peace upon him, which takes it to a broader field of universal truth, of universal vision, perspective. Allah said, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the messenger believes in what has been revealed to him from his Lord, as do the faithful, the believers. Each one of them. Why is it repeating? Why is it repeating? Because there's emphasis that each of us individually are responsible in the same way the prophet and the messenger is responsible. He's not an angel. He's a human being being given messenger. He's been created as a messenger. He's been created to be the prophet and the messenger. But it's not taking responsibility. It's the model for the responsibility of every believer. So the messenger believes in what? In what has been revealed to him from his Lord, as do the faithful. Kulun emanat billahi. Each one of them believe independently. No one can believe for the other, right? But we're strengthened in the collective body. And that's why Allah said that the prayer in the collective group is 27 to 29 times greater of value, of importance, of effect. Just because we're together, or because there's something that we share that requires the collective body, requires the faith of each and every one of us. The collective body requires for the success of the collective body. That's why each and every one of them have a responsibility to the community. That's why there's a law. And that's why the early scholars of Islam saw that without the Islamic law, community would dissipate. It would be subject to the same weaknesses that all human beings are subject to, and the community is subject to. Each one of them believes in Allah, His angels, His books, and the messenger. We make no distinction between one another of His messengers, and they say, we hear and we obey. Your forgiveness, our Lord. We seek your forgiveness, and to you is the end of all journeys. all the journeys are going to be concluded. All of us have a journey, individually and collectively. Each of us have a responsibility to invest in our journey, in our travel, right? In our journey, so that the end will be with Allah. Is the journey going to conclude with Allah as a figure? It's metaphors. It's a metaphor for what values Allah has bestowed on human beings, what Allah has revealed to human beings through all these books and messengers. This is that great body of knowledge. You know, I had to think about the angel. Allah said, believe in Allah and his angels. That's a very important point, right? The angels of God. And I think when we think about it, there being this department of angelic affairs, it must carry that kind of weight. If it comes before the books, before the messengers, there's the department of angelic affairs. And we know they got the memo, right? I'm going to make a man, right? I'm going to make a Khalifa. So this is some heavy stuff going on up in the heavens, right? In the higher realms of knowledge, understanding, really in the higher realms of reality. And the journey, the end of the journey, is when the reality, all the covers are taken off. Right? Even my own sense of self is gone. Nothing left, right? It says about they'd be naked, right? But it'd be so much drama that no one would even look at another person. So it's another reality that's being unfolded here. And it's a beautiful thought when you think about the universality of Islam. It's bringing all the prophets and books and messages together. It's simplifying religion for us. It's making it clear. It's making it easier to understand. So the destination is with Allah, metaphorically, with what Allah has willed. And another parable, there's a beautiful parable of the prophet, praise and peace. But I think it helps to understand this whole perspective, religious Islamic perspective, or the religious perspective that Islam is offering to humanity. That's our role, is to offer to humanity an alternative, right? As we know, Allah said, you're the best community brought out for that purpose, for that role. The parable, the prophet, he said, the parable of the prophets who preceded myself is a building that someone had beautifully and perfectly constructed. Now we get into construction, get into logic, into how ideas are going to relate and build and form a broader concept, right? But a single brick was missing in one of its corners. So whenever people pass by that building, expressing their fascination in it, they used to say, the missing brick has to be laid. Incomplete. Revelation is incomplete. The movement of revelation in the earth among humanity was incomplete. The prophet is saying it's like a building. And the brick is, he said, I am the brick. I am that brick, and I am the seal of the prophets. He said, I am. He realized his role. He realized that he was that same human being, that same orphan, the same one that was mistreated. He knew his reality. He knew his language level, his knowledge level, he knew his educational level. He was aware of all of that. But he recognized that in this perspective, in this formula for universal life that had been revealed to all the prophets, he had a chance to see them, right? The Jews, and had close relationship with the Jews and the Christians. His wife went to her uncle, right? And told her about his experience. And he said, yes, he's one of the bricks in that building. That's what he said, right? So the missing brick has to be laid, and I am that brick. I am the seal of the prophet. So this is the completion. This is the finish of the movement of revelation from over time, humanity, through generations. And the Prophet Muhammad, praise and peace be upon him, is an affirmation to that construction. What is important about it that we should, I think, digest, understand is talking about Islam as a universal religion, not a private thing, right? Not a cultural thing, right? It doesn't favor one group. It does not favor one group over another. It does not favor one class over another. It's universal, has to be left and not to be understood properly. So prayer, as we mentioned, right, the prophet is teaching us, as we learn, prayer is the critical support for that structure. How did he express it? He said, never did a nation fall until they left off praying. That changes the conversation somewhat, right? To apply to prayer. Naturally, our sins will be erased. That's good. Right? We want our sins erased. But obviously, there's a bigger message here and a bigger job here, right? If it affects the whole nation, right? But prayer is that critical support for a nation. And the building is a physical building, we know it's metaphorical. But isn't Islam then, by virtue of this, suggesting that there's an ideological structure where ideas are built from different cultures, different backgrounds, right? Different people, different experiences throughout the whole universe, right? Throughout the whole world, the global community. That he's telling us that he's part of that structure, that ideological structure, not just religious structure, but everything that enhances the human life, that adds to our value, adds to our human value, everything that increases us in our human value, mental, spiritual, right, emotional, social, in all the dimensions as Allah has created us, right? Then that is something that's very important for that prayer should be interpreted and understood. And it's much more than that, nations will fall without. And maybe it's to be seeing how nations lose their momentum. Of course, that's not new, right? Greek civilization, Greek Roman, right? That's been in the past, the rise and fall of nations. They lose their momentum because of this overlooked importance that the human being is spiritually constituted, first of all. And it is a dynamic proposition that keeps us from being stagnant. I mean, by race is about the most stagnant you can get. I mean, you almost feel sorry for someone, right? I mean, you are dead and walking dead to think that there's one race superior to any other race. Right? All of us have the same headaches, right? Same blood pressure, right? Right? Very embarrassing blood type, but that's a primitive idea. So yes, a nation can fall if it lives to try to strive upon such a narrow ideology. So as I conclude, the universality of the Islamic color lies in the fact that the main theme of which human life is spiritually evolved. And we were told that it evolved to a point that it's like a journey, a point where we reach the end of the journey, the fulfillment of the message, of the movement. So definitely Allah, all relations came to encourage us to think for ourselves. But the Prophet said that he was the completion of the structure. He was not to override all those that came before. They all are in the bricks. They all are in the structure. And he is concluded. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Wa barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim fil alamin innaka Hamidun Majid. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. To conclude the khutbah for today, the universality of Islam and the application of Islam in human life and human society, you can see it respects the human being, the makeup, the nature of the human being. To have relationships, not just with himself, but relationship with the material world, the material reality. We're born to have a relationship with that. And our life is dependent upon our relationship with the material reality. So a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said that speaking about the merchant, he said that the honest and sincere merchant will be resurrected among the righteous, the martyrs, the prophets. This is our religion. Our Islam is broad, it's a panoramic book. And obviously it's taking into consideration the makeup of the human person. That he will need to have an economic reality to express his life, to preserve his life, but it's also an expression of life. The fact that we can manage our resources. You can manage your resources well. And the optimum measurement for being able to manage our resources well is that we can provide for the people who don't have the ability to manage their resources well, or dependent on resources. That we accept them to be dependent on our resources. That's why charity is seen as an obligation, not a gift. It's a requirement. Without giving charity, you're breaking the law of Islam, right? So the honest and sincere, Tajirun, Sadiq, and Alameen, he must have both those qualities, of course. He must be truthful and must be faithful. And that will earn him. Again, that's the defining Islam, defining religion. Where's this place going to be in the prayer? Up there where the prophets is. That's the definition of religion. But it's not just for angels, right? Not angel life. It's not an angel message. The merchant is up there with the martyrs, right? The shaheeds, right? Those who gave their life for their Islam. They're in a special place. You know? The prophets are in a special place. The righteous, right? The Saudi king. So the prophet prays the people, having established that Islam is inclusive for a whole life for a human being, a healthy life, with all the components agreeing with the other. And that is what is defined as real falah. That's the falah. Hayya salah, hayya falah. You can't say hayya salah, stop. It's not the call, if that won't be the call of Islam. So the prophet prays the people. And now look at the words of the prophet is speaking into this community context. Really social values or personal values that we should have individually. Everyone may not need this advice, but I think there's something valuable in it. The prophet said, look at those who have less than you do. It's undur, and it's translated, look. But I'm understanding that the prophet is saying, what you see and accept and decide to be an influence, what you accept as an influence in your life. You see what you see, isn't that beautiful what the prophet would be informing, teaching? Because most of his followers were very poor, right? Very, very, very poor. And the majority of them, they hadn't come into the wealth yet. So he's teaching them how to live a good Muslim life with integrity. And the integrity of a Muslim life is one that is grateful. We say alhamdulillah, not just for other people to hear, but for us to hear ourselves. Right? Alhamdulillah. I have to thank Allah. I'm thankful. Look at those who have less than you do, and don't look at those who have more than you do. Don't see them as not that they're not valuable. Don't see them, right, as something you have to emulate. That's your example. That's your mind. Rich and what? Rich and famous, rich and shame. That's Western. That's how they influence, right? So that you would not disgrace the blessings of Allah on you. Ingratitude disgraces Allah. So now I've given you all that you have. You don't like it. I mean, not big enough for you, right? Not the right color. Not the right. So you can see Allah was saying, the prophet saying, warning the believers against that, right? Because so that you will not disgrace the blessing of Allah on you. Commercial TV feeds that notion. Feeds that notion of images and programs of people who are living a much higher lifestyle, right? Who live homes that maybe a city can live in, just a home, right? So it feeds this fact of admiring other people. So you see, this is what one of the religions called the culture of disbelief. But this is the culture of disbelief. If we don't protect ourselves from this, we're vulnerable, just like we did at the beginning. That makes us even more vulnerable. So it feeds ingratitude in the public. And as a result, that could very well, and I'm sure it can be proven, it drives certain people to desperation. And they really may not see the harm in it, because the world has given him this message that he deserves to have something, even if it's someone else's. Distortion of reason, yeah, absolutely. But that's why we've been warned. That's why it's a divine revelation. Because what Satan can produce, right, is something that's going to go against divine truth. So that conclude with these verses of the Quran where Allah says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, all that is on earth will perish. Now, how about that for a reference? When material things become the God, become the judge, right? Become the basis from which we make moral decisions and we live our lives. They influence our thinking about life value, right? All that on earth will perish. I believe they have no problem embracing. We don't want to see man's work last forever, right? While valuing and appreciating and living into upon the basis of justice. But Allah is not going to shy about telling us the reality. All that is on earth will perish, but what will abide? You know, maybe the merchant, he's going to be in heaven. So he's good. He's still good, right? Along with the prophets and the righteous and the believers. And inshallah, all of us will be there too. Inshallah. But will abide forever? The face of your Lord. That's abide forever. Full majesty, bounty, and honor. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? You know, that's Surah Rahman, right? Subhana Rabbi Izzati Amma Yasifun, wa Salamun al Mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Exalted be your Lord, the Lord of majesty, above that which they attribute to him, and peace be upon those who are sent to warn. And praise be to Allah, the cherished sustainer of all the systems of God. And